Hi, my name is Mason Waring. I'm a partner at Chisholm and Kilpatrick. I'm joined here with my colleague, attorney Leah Small. Today, we're going to talk about working while receiving long-term disability benefits. And you may be surprised to hear that many policies allow people to work and receive long-term disability benefits, but there's some important things that you should know before returning to work. And we're here to talk to you about some of those. So let's get going. We're going to talk specifically why it's important to read your policy and understand the definitions of disability, particularly the difference between own occupation and any occupation, and talk to you about some of the effects that working might have on your benefits. So Leah, could you start out by telling our viewers why it's important to read the policy?
So it's a good idea for any claimant before they file for benefits and while they're on claim to review their policy carefully, because the policies have a lot of important provisions that are going to govern your long-term disability claim, including your benefit amount, what your definition of disability is, how long you can receive benefits for, any restrictions or exclusions in your policy, things like that. So it's a good idea for anyone to read their policy. But the policy is also likely going to address and have provisions relating to whether you can attempt to return to work and still continue to receive long-term disability benefits. Those provisions might address what type of work you can do, how much you can earn, and how any of those earnings are going to affect your monthly benefit amount. It's important for people to keep in mind, though, that even if their policy allows them to return to work and still receive benefits, the insurance company might use that return to work against them as an argument that they're no longer disabled at all and thus terminate their benefits.
Right, and that's why it's important to really, for you, your doctors, and the insurance company to have a clear understanding as to what your impairments are, what your abilities are, and what kind of work you'll be doing, just so there's no mistakes made there. And one of the key components of the policy, as we mentioned before, it's the definition of disability and the difference between own occupation and any occupation disability. Leah, could you elaborate on that, please?
So the own occupation definition of disability examines whether the claimant is able to perform the duties of the occupation they were doing at the time disability started. And oftentimes it can be a little easier to return to work and still receive LTD benefits if you're operating under that definition of disability, because your own occupation may be much more demanding, either cognitively or physically, and it's much clearer why you're not capable of doing that occupation, but you can do something that's less demanding. For example, you might see a situation where a firefighter has orthopedic injuries, and so they can't do the physical demands of that job, but they can go do a sedentary office job. And if they're receiving benefits under an own occupation definition of disability, they may still be able to receive those benefits because they're still clearly disabled from their occupation as a firefighter, even while they're working in an office.
And probably makes sense to dig a little deeper into any occupation now, because that's probably the most tricky situation for people working and getting long-term disability benefits.
Right. And as always, it's going to go back to read your policy carefully, because whether you can work and still receive benefits and how much freedom you have to do so is really going to depend on how the any occupation definition is defined in your policy. Some policies have very broad any occupation definitions, which simply look at whether the claimant is incapable of performing the duties of any job whatsoever. In that sort of scenario, if someone goes back to work at another job, they may be disqualified from receiving benefits. However, other policies have a narrower any occupation definition of disability that might look at, are they able to perform the duties of a job that earns them a certain percentage of what they were earning before? In those situations, if someone can go do a less demanding job that doesn't earn as much as they earned before, and thus they're still under that, what we call the gainful component threshold, they may be able to work, have earnings, and continue to receive LTD benefits even under the any occupation definition.
So let's move now to talk about what types of impacts working may have on benefits.
Again, read your policy, because every policy treats this differently, and so it's going to depend on the specifics of your policy. But oftentimes, if you are still receiving LTD benefits but also have work earnings, it may end up reducing your LTD benefits somewhat. Some policies, it may be a straight dollar-for-dollar reduction, looking at what your LTD benefit is and simply subtracting what your monthly earnings are. Other policies will deduct just a percentage of your work earnings, and there are even other policies that simply look at if your benefit plus your work earnings exceed your pre-disability earnings, and in that case, they deduct that amount that exceeds, so you're not receiving more than you were while you were still working. Other policies may say you can only earn up to a certain amount, and if you exceed that amount, then your benefits end altogether, regardless of other factors. And as we noted earlier, it's important to keep in mind, again, that if you attempt to return to work, the insurance company might look at it as, are you really still disabled, even if your policy does allow you to have earnings and still receive some sort of LTD benefit. So that's really important, and that impact on your benefits is really important to keep in mind, as well as simply the impact on your health, because you may feel better now that you're not working and feel able to attempt to return to something, but now returning to some sort of work could negatively impact your health. And so you want to keep that in mind and talk to your doctors about that as well before taking any definitive steps.
Great advice, Leah. So two key takeaways. You need to read and understand your policy terms, and these are fact-specific situations, and you really have to consider what kind of work you intend to do, what are your health restrictions, and again, what your policy says. If you have questions about your long-term disability claim or working, or if your claim has been wrongly denied, please reach out to us to see if we could help. It costs nothing to speak with us to see if we can help. Our number is 401-331-6300. You can find us on the web at cck-law.com. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment if there's a topic that you'd like us to hit in the future. Thank you.